held online in accordance with the state government recommendations in response to the recent COVID-19 outbreak. Colleagues, firstly, Ms. Peter Duncan.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, everybody.
And Mr. Chris Eddy.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, all.
Thank you. And I'd also like to introduce our Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Craig Lloyd, and ask that he in turn introduces the members of his executive leadership team in attendance.
Good evening, everyone. And I'd also like to introduce Community Wellbeing, Ms. Director of Corporate Services, Ms. Amy Montalti, Director of Planning and Development, Mr. Justin O'Mara, Director of Infrastructure and Environment, Ms. Debbie Wood, Executive Manager, Governance and Strategy, Mr. Frank Joyce, and our Executive Manager of Public Affairs, Ms. Janine Morgan. Almighty God, we ask for your blessing upon this council to make informed and good decisions to benefit the people of the city of Whittlesea. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. I'll hand over to the Chair of Council, Ms. Lydia Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. On behalf of the City of Whittlesea, I recognise the rich Aboriginal heritage of this country and acknowledge the Wurundjeri Willem clan as the traditional owners of this place. And I'd also like to personally acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. I note that all administrators are present. And before commencing the formal business of council, there are three matters that we would like to speak to and or acknowledge. And if I could perhaps start off by just making a few comments in relation to the pandemic and particularly of relevance to the City of Whittlesea. As everyone would be only too well aware, COVID numbers in our local community continue to rise. But thankfully, so too do the vaccination rates, and we're really pleased about that. As we move towards the Victorian Government's roadmap to reopening, it's never been more important than ever to ensure that we're all vaccinated. Too many people in our community are in hospital, and sadly, a number of them have died, and that includes a number of residents of the City of Whittlesea. So we want to urge you to make sure that you get your booking for your vaccination if you're eligible and haven't done so through the Victorian Government State Vaccine Hub, which is at Plenty Ranges Arts and Convention Centre at the rear of the council offices, or through your GP or through local pharmacies. And obviously there are details available on our own website and at coronavirus.vic.gov.au. Council's partnering with the government, local health providers and community agencies to help our residents find and book vaccine appointments. And we recently launched several booking booths to further support our community to ensure that they get vaccinated. And look out for those booths which are at some of our local shopping precincts. We'll be able to help you to book your vaccinations, provide you with information and also transport support if that is required. Our booths will also have multilingual staff on hand to help those who may need information and support in their own language. I'd also like to thank all those in our community who have already received the vaccine and to the hundreds of people who've been in isolation and staying home to play their part in supporting the local community. Each one of us have got a really important to play right now. Finally, I just wanted to send out a particular acknowledgement and recognition of Northern Health and DPV Health to the many health professionals that operate across those organisations and are at the front line, whether it's doctors, nurses, allied health staff, paramedics, and other support personnel. We've got a really huge debt of gratitude to those staff for helping us to keep safe and their huge amount of endeavour during the vaccination period. It's interesting to note that since the rollout began in March, Northern Health has provided over 200,000 vaccinations to our community, which is a really major milestone that we should all be so proud of. And the clinic is currently vaccinating approximately 1,500 people per day. So again, just in concluding on this item, we must all do our bit and stay safe and healthy and look out for one another. Thank you. Could I now hand over to Ms Duncan for further acknowledgement?
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to acknowledge 5 of our young people from the City of Whittlesea that recently participated in the Victorian Youth Parliament. This happened during the recent school holidays where our youth services team at Council supported a group of local young people to participate in the annual Youth Parliament program. The Youth Parliament is run by Victoria YMCA, and it's an opportunity for young people aged 16 to 25 to have their voices heard at the highest levels of government and in the state government. These sorts of initiatives are part of Council's broader support for community leadership, and we're extremely proud of last week's youth participants who included, and I think it's, absolutely necessary we name them, Monica Boseska, Jasmine Bullock, Victoria Warder, Anna Scott and Nina Fitzsimmons. So this team participated on behalf of the Council and sponsored the Improved Accessibility in Public Transport Bill, which was overwhelmingly supported by the Youth Parliament in the Legislative Assembly and passed following the same procedures that the Victorian Government used to adopt bills in Victoria. The Improved Accessibility in Public Transport Bill is an act to improve access to trains, stations and services with a particular attention to barriers faced by people with disabilities. So critically important, the work they've done here. The bill also ensures regular maintenance of all train stations to facilitate safe and easy transport use across metro and rural train stations. Another really critical issue is to be safe when you're travelling around the state, whether it's in our own municipality or broader than that across Metro Melbourne. So once again, on behalf of the administrators, congratulations to all of you for representing our community so well.
Thank you, Ms Duncan, and I would echo your congratulations to our Whittlesea team. Well done. And just a further acknowledgement, if I could, and that is to recognise that Friday the 1st of October was the International Day of Older Persons, and obviously a day to celebrate older people's contribution to the community and also to raise awareness of issues around ageing in today's world. And this year's theme is very topical. It's digital equity for all ages. And it's obviously a focus on access and participation in the digital world by older persons. And obviously now with the key theme during the pandemic, when so many of our services and social interactions are online. Just to reflect for a minute on our statistics, in 2021, an estimated 29,300 people aged 65 and over call the City of Whittlesea home. That's 12% of our population. And by 2041, this is forecast to almost double to be 54,660 people, and that will be making up 14% of the population. In Victoria, the month of October is celebrated as the Victorian Seniors Festival, and councils organised an unbelievable suite of online programs, including a virtual high tea, which will be held on the 13th of October. And we're really proud that in excess of 200 residents have already booked in for this event, and further information is available via Council's website. Ms Duncan and I will also be participating, and I note that it's not too late to book. You can book before the 6th of October, and you would be receiving little high tea packs that have been catered by local businesses and will be delivered to your door. So it's a wonderful initiative of our Whittlesea Positive Ageing team, and congratulations to our staff. And Peter and I really look forward to sharing and celebrating along with some of our older residents. Thank you. Administrators, if you have a conflict of interest in any item on the notice paper, you may verbally disclose the type and nature of the interest now, but you must make a declaration immediately before consideration of the matter in question. Are there any items for which you have a conflict of interest to declare?
No, Chair.
No, Chair.
And I have no conflict of interest as well. I seek a motion to confirm the minutes of the following preceding meeting, which is the scheduled meeting of Council held on the 6th of September 2021. Could I have a mover?
So moved.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. And a seconder?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. And I'll now put the matter to a vote. All those in favour of confirming the minutes? The motion is carried. I note that there are no public questions received for the council meeting. And I also note that we have one petition, and the petition is from 12 residents relating to the removal of gum trees in Woodstock Drive and Shetland Way, Doreen. And Mr. Lloyd, if I could please ask you to read the petition.
Thank you, Chair. We, the residents of Woodstock Drive and Shetland Way, Doreen, wish to raise with the City of Whittlesea our serious concerns about the state of the trees lining both streets. We refer to Woodstock Drive east of Brookwood Avenue. These now fully grown ghost gum trees have been planted close together with at least 2 or 3 outside each residence. The roots of these trees have caused significant damage, and previous requests to council action have proved fruitless. Over the past 12 months, all ghost gum trees in Woodstock Drive west of Brookwood have been removed by council. The only trees remaining, about 10% in total, in Woodstock Drive are east of Brookwood Avenue. We respectfully request that the remaining trees in Woodstock Drive and Shetland Way be removed as a matter of urgency to prevent further damage to our homes. It is evident that residents in both streets take pride in their homes and they are all well maintained. It would be appreciated if our concerns are considered as a matter of urgency to prevent further damage and cost to residents.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Administrators, do you have any questions in relation to this petition?
No, Chair.
If not, I'm happy to move as follows: that Council note the petition and that a final report will be presented to Council at its meeting of the 8th of November 2021. Do I have a seconder for the motion?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Duncan. I'll now move the item. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. Administrators will now work through the agenda, and the first item of business is item 6.1.1, the Annual Report 2020-2021. And I would like to move the motion, which is that Council resolve to receive and note the 2020-21 Annual Report in accordance with Section 101 of the Local Government Act 2020. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy. Given that it is our annual report, I'm going to perhaps suggest that we don't ask any questions, and that I perhaps will initially start in moving the motion with some comments in relation to the annual report. Our 2020-21 annual report is obviously a requirement of the Local Government Act, but it is much, much more than that. It's a really important document which highlights council performance over the past year, our achievements against the commitments made in year 4 of the council plan, and it also reports against our annual budget and our financial position. This is the first full year for the council under the leadership of administrators, and also with a new CEO, Mr. Lloyd, and a new executive leadership team. And I really need to acknowledge the exhaustive efforts of our staff right from the outset. I'm immensely proud of the amazing work undertaken by our staff, and particularly given a period of enormous instability and turbulence associated with the pandemic. We've had to continue to deliver all of our essential services and also our major infrastructure projects, and to constantly adapt the way that we work and the way that we deliver core services. It's just been a constant process of flux, and this has obviously not been easy. We've also played a huge role in actively supporting our community and business sectors, including the provision of practical advice, support and referrals, and tangible financial assistance. Council's $2 million COVID-19 recovery program, which we have reported on previously, was co-designed with our community, and it includes, amongst other things, $400,000 to our community organisations for emergency relief and $400,000 for a support local campaign and incentive program to help local business. Our residents, service providers, local business and the staff at the City of Whittlesea have all shown enormous strength and resilience, and have also provided enormous support to one another during these really uncertain times. And I know it's also true of my colleague administrators, feel incredibly privileged to be representing the community. A number of other really tangible highlights of the past year have been a continued dedicated focus on good governance, genuine community engagement and customer service. And I know that we will comment further in a later report in relation to those aspects. We continuously strive to make it easier for the community to interact with council, and to this end we developed and are progressively implementing a new consultation and engagement policy, and have built a dedicated online engagement portal to help engage with the community more often on the things that matter to them. We've also seen the delivery of more than $54 million of projects as part of our new works program, and completion of a host of important infrastructure projects. And again, that's no mean feat in the current pandemic context. And just a few of the examples, the state-of-the-art facilities at the $25 million refurbishment of Mill Park Leisure, which was opened in April. The All Abilities Play Space in Mill Park, which was completed in February. Some really significant streetscape improvements in Laylaw and Thomastown. Kindergarten improvements, the upgrade of the Mill Park Library, commencement of a new community centre in Wollert East, the Findon Road extension, and the installation of solar panels at 10 community centres, and that's just to name a few of those important infrastructure projects. So again, I'm extremely proud to be tabling the annual report and to acknowledge the enormous contribution, not just of my colleagues, but importantly of staff right across the organisation and our community and business sectors. So thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd love to. Having only been on board since mid-May, and therefore by my calculation about 6 weeks of the period of which this annual report relates to, I'm very pleased to take credit. It's a terrific report, and I might just, following on from your comments, Madam Chair, note another couple of highlights that I think are worth pointing out the introduction of the opt-in food and garden waste recycling service. That resulted in a 16% increase in the diversion of food and garden waste from landfill, which is no mean feat. Particularly, I was very excited to see the work that had been done to develop a new online planning portal, which has allowed people to now manage their planning applications from start to finish, all in that one online location, as well as receive real-time updates on the status of their applications. So the whole process is much quicker and faster and easier, and therefore an improvement to the service that's made available to our customers. Note also the continued work on the $4.5 million McLean's Road kindergarten, which will open in January, ready for the start of the new kindergarten year. I think it's also worth noting that the report looks great and it's easy to read, and I do recommend it to you as a read, and you'll find it on the website of the council, whittlesea.vic.gov.au/annual report, all one word. It's pretty easy to find, and it's very sustainable by reading it that way. So happy to second that motion and support this annual report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy, and I omitted to say that it is also an incredibly readable, easy to navigate annual report as well. So thank you for also making that comment. Ms. Duncan, would you like to make any further comments?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think everything that yourself and Administrator Eddy have said absolutely sums up perfectly the annual report. I'd just like to acknowledge that we have continued to develop strong partnerships and advocate to all levels of government about the issues that matter to our community in the City of Whittlesea. And those include funding for community infrastructure, the roads to reduce congestion, and really importantly, mental health and family violence support services. Council successfully advocated for and received an Orange Door access point, a key family violence support service, which we absolutely need, which is fantastic. And we also received a Headspace satellite service for youth mental health at the baseline for young people facility. And I think we should be very proud of being able to obtain those services for our community. That's all I've got to say. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Duncan. I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is unanimously carried. Thank you. Item 6.1.2, update on Council's Disability Action Plan 2017-21, outstanding actions. And we have our Director Community Wellbeing, Ms. Kate McCackey, presenting on this item. Thank you, Ms. McCackey.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to provide an update on the 5 outstanding actions for the Disability Plan 2017-21. Moving forward, our proposed Community Plan 2021-25 will incorporate the Disability Action Plan as well as the Municipal Public Health and Wellbeing Plan. And the purpose of this model, with these 3 critical documents being integrated into one, is to take a holistic approach to better realise health, wellbeing and participation outcomes for the whole community. The previous 2017-21 disability plan consisted of 105 actions undertaken over 4 years, and 100 actions of those were completed. Some significant outcomes achieved during this period include the All Abilities Playground at Mill Park, improved facilities for residents with disabilities as part of the Mill Park Leisure Centre redevelopment, delivery of the Marbaloo Portable Change Facility for events, and an increase from 3 to 8 in changing places facilities within the municipality. But the 5 actions that were not achieved include a number of employment initiatives, a community disability survey, and a training program for staff to improve some communication protocols. So we've really worked to incorporate some of those areas of actions that we didn't achieve during the last 4 years into the new proposed community plan, which is going to council soon. Part of the development of this new plan included consultation with the Whittlesea Disability Network, and feedback from that group most recently in September was that they were supportive of this approach. And I note that an annual progress report specifically on the DAP actions within our broader plan will be presented to Council and the Whittlesea Disability Network moving forward as part of our broader reporting framework. And so the recommendation is that Council note the Disability Action Plan's 5 outstanding actions and that they've been integrated into the draft community plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms McCackey. I might actually start the ball rolling myself just in relation to a couple of questions, but you have already partially responded to my first question, which was, I note in the report there was a comment that the Whittlesea Disability Network has been consulted or advised in relation to the process of integration of the new DAP with the community plan, and you've indicated that they've been supportive overall of the approach. That's correct?
Yes, that's correct. And we'll continue to engage with them in the delivery of the plan over the next 4 years.
That's really good to note. Thank you, Ms McCackey. And secondly, there is a comment within the report that, not that it's a risk, but we obviously need to ensure that there's no diminished visibility of disability priorities through the integration. Could you perhaps also comment on that aspect?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Most definitely. I think that's one of the reasons why we're going to pull out and have a separate report around the disability actions within the proposed community plan each year. And also that will be reported back to the Disability Network so that we just keep that lens on that the work that we're doing in this portfolio. There are real benefits and opportunities, obviously, to having an integrated approach. It makes it the business of everybody rather than just 1 or 2 particular teams. But the challenge of that is that it's also dispersed, so hence the new reporting approach.
Thank you, Ms McCackey. Administrators, are there any further questions that you have?
No.
No? Could I then ask for a mover for the officer recommendation for item 6.1.2?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Duncan, and I'm happy to second the item. Ms Duncan, would you like to speak to the item?
Just briefly, Chair, to acknowledge that out of the 105 actions, 100 were delivered, and it's, you know, very good to see that we've picked up those 5 that will be worked on continuously now, and just to congratulate council officers and council on that. I think that's a really good achievement.
Thank you, Ms Duncan, and I was going to echo that comment that it is really a significant achievement. The purpose of this report was really to look at the 5 outstanding actions that had not been achieved, and really the detail on what had been achieved was largely contained in the report that came to council in July. So the focus of this was just really on the outstanding actions. But I really just wanted to also pick up on a point that Ms McCackey made right at the end in her response to questions, which is it does actually give us a really good opportunity to ensure that the Disability Action Plan actions are integrated right across the organisation and, to quote Ms McCackey, do become the business of the whole of the organisation rather than one area. So it's got an opportunity to ensure that that cross-organisational awareness of and commitment to disability inclusion is actually heightened through this approach. So thank you for that. Any further comments before I put the motion?
No, Chair.
So I'll put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 6.1.3, Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation for Planning Enforcement Officer. And if I could ask our Executive Manager Governance and Strategy, Mr Frank Joyce, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to welcome Samantha Boyle, Unit Manager of Governance and Risk, who will present this report.
Thank you. Ms Boyle, over to you.
Through you, Chair. I present the Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation for the Planning Enforcement Officer. This is a standard report to provide the staff member with the appropriate delegations to perform the duties of Planning Enforcement Officer. The instrument has been prepared in accordance with the relevant legislation, particularly the Planning and Environment Act and the Local Government Act. The recommendation is that Council resolve to appoint and authorise the member of Council's planning enforcement staff referred to in the attached instrument as an authorised officer pursuant to the powers conferred on Council by Section 224 of the Local Government Act 1989, Section 147 Part 4 of the Planning Environment Act 1987 and other legislation referred to in the instrument.
Thank you, Ms Boyle. Administrators, do you have any questions relating to this item?
No, Chair.
No.
No, Chair.
To move the officer recommendation for item 6.1.3. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you, Mr Eddy. I don't wish to speak to this item because, as Ms Boyle indicated, it's a standard report which is self-explanatory. Would the seconder like to speak to the item?
Procedural matter, Chair. No additional comment to make.
Thank you, Mr Eddy. I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, Ms Boyle. Item 6.2.1, reconstruction of Arthurs Creek Road from Plenty Road to Recreation Road, contract 2021-42, tender evaluation report. And if I could invite the Director of Infrastructure and Environment, Ms Wood, to speak to this item.
Thank you, Chair. I would actually like to introduce Mr. Nick Mazzarella, Capital Delivery, who will speak to this report.
Thank you, Ms Wood.
Thank you, Ms Wood, and thank you, Chair. Not sure my video is not working, but I'll keep talking.
We can hear you, Mr. Mazzarella.
That's fine. I'll introduce this report. It's for a decision to award a contract to reconstruct over 1,200 metres of Arthurs Creek Road between Plenty Road and Recreation Road at the Whittlesea Township. This is a two-lane road and it's in poor condition with the parts of the road failing at the moment. The tender for construction closed in May and we received 9 tenders. And the tender evaluation panel is recommending that a contract be awarded to Build Infrastructure Proprietary Limited for just over $2.1 million. The work is mostly funded by the Federal Government Economic Stimulus Program. The works themselves are planned between the end of this month, October, to February next year. There will be detours that will be needed for a period of time. And there'll be some community information via our media release, Facebook, and some variable message sign trailers and letter drops along that route. That's pretty much what I've got to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mazzarella. I was going to again start the ball rolling just with a very simple question, but I think the response might have already been provided. My question to Ms Wood or Mr Mazzarella was really just on that latter point, that I noted that variable message sign trailers will be used to inform road users of the impending works and updates on our social media channels and through customer service staff. But my query is really about direct letterboxing to the affected residents. And I think I heard Mr Mazzarella say right at the end of his introduction that in fact will be the case.
Yeah, thanks through you, Chair. Yes, we will ensure that all of the adjoining residents are letterbox dropped as well. Thank
you, Ms Wood. And I think Mr Eddy's got a question.
I do, thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if it's for Ms Wood or Mr Mazzarella. I note that of the 9 tenderers, only 4 of them are listed in the report as conforming. I just wondered whether they could make a comment on whether they're satisfied we've had a suitably competitive process to get this outcome.
Thanks, Mr Eddy. I might hand that one to Mr Mazzarella.
Yes, thanks, Ms Wood. So I'm happy to answer that. In essence, we're very confident that we've got a very good field. The prices have come in relatively close and very close to our pre-tender estimate. So while we did have quite a few non-conforming, we had sufficient number that were conforming and close to our pre-tender estimate as well.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Any further questions? No. Could I have a mover for the officer recommendation for item 6.2.1?
Happy to move this, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan, and a seconder.
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Eddy. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to really acknowledge that this road upgrade improvement will be very good to improve our community safety. And I think local drivers can look forward to a more comfortable commute thanks to the upgrade of Arthurs Creek Road in Yanyeen. Also with the reconstruct of Arthurs Creek Road between Plenty Road and Recreation Road, it will provide a smoother and safer ride. So that's something to all look forward to, I think. The upgrade connection to note will also include new asphalt, line marking, guardrails, and much needed drainage improvements. So I think that's going to be critically important for that safety aspect as well. So looking forward to seeing that come to light, as I'm sure the community will be as well. And that's really all I wanted to make an acknowledgement of.
Thank you, Ms. Duncan. Would the seconder like to also speak to the item?
Just briefly, Chair, this is one of many projects that we're delivering this year as part of a $76 million investment, really, in new and updated infrastructure, including road projects, which, as we know, are vital to keep the community connected as efficiently as possible. We note that the road will be closed for about 6 weeks to complete these works safely and efficiently, and the detours will be in place, and the messaging we've heard is going to be out there so that people know what's happening, which is vitally important, of course. And we expect the works to be completed by early next year. I do believe I read also that we've received some support for this from the Victorian Government's Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program. We're of course ever grateful for any support we can get to deliver the massive number of projects that we need to deliver in a growth council such as this. So our thanks to the government for that, and my thanks to the officers for presenting this report to us tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy. I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 6.2.2, Proposed Planning Scheme Amendment 2000 Donnybrook Road, Yanyeen Road. And if I could ask Mr. Justin O'Mara, our Director of Planning and Development, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce Strategic Planner Jane Maynard, who's going to provide a brief overview of the report and officer recommendation. Over to you, Jane.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I present the proposed planning scheme amendment for 2000 Donnybrook Road in Yanyeen. I put forward the officer recommendation, as stated in the report, to write to the Minister for Planning expressing support for the rezoning of land at 2000 Donnybrook Road to facilitate the use and development of the site for a cemetery. So some background. The site covers approximately 83 hectares of undeveloped Crown land, and the purpose of the amendment is to rezone this land to allow a cemetery to be built at the site. The site has been reserved for cemetery purposes for many years, dating back to 1931, and this amendment follows through on those plans. The amendment has been initiated by the Greater Melbourne Cemeteries Trust, or GMCT, who now wish to commence background work to ultimately develop the site. In terms of timelines, GMCT are anticipating master planning and community engagement will take place between 2024 and 2025, with construction set to commence potentially between 2028 and 2030. The proposed amendment would see the site rezoned from its current Green Wedge and Rural Conservation zones to the Public Use Zone 5, or PUZ5, for which the primary purpose is cemetery. This is to better reflect the site's ultimate use as a cemetery and to set up a planning framework to allow for its implementation and development over time. The Department of Land, Water and Planning have confirmed that as the land is publicly owned and the amendment is eligible to be processed via a fast-tracked planning scheme amendment process. This will be an expedited process under Section 20, Part 4 of the Planning and Environment Act, where the Minister for Planning rather than Council will be the planning authority. And under this process, the Minister also approves the amendment without the need for a formal statutory exhibition process. And so because of this, the Greater Melbourne Cemeteries Trust are now requesting that Council provide its views to the Minister on the proposed amendment. So in conclusion, the proposal to rezone the land to public use 5 will allow more appropriately for the implementation of a cemetery use for the site, reflecting its long-term reservation for cemetery purposes. It is therefore recommended that Council resolve to write to the Minister for Planning expressing support for the rezoning of 2000 Donnybrook Road from Green Wedge Zone and Rural Conservation Zone 1 to Public Use Zone 5 via a Section 20 Part 4 process. This is to facilitate the use and development of the site for a cemetery. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms Maynard. That was a really comprehensive overview of the background to this planning scheme amendment and also of the process, so thank you very much. Could I just ask a question, and I might in the first instance address it to Mr O'Mara. We do need to note that we've had a couple of very comprehensive briefings in relation to this particular planning scheme amendment, most recently from the CEO of the Greater Melbourne Cemeteries Trust and her senior officers. But I think it's really important for the purposes of public advice and awareness that we nonetheless do ask just a couple of questions, particularly in relation to community engagement. So I wonder if you could make a comment about the process and opportunity for involvement in the development of the master plan, both for council and council officers and administrators, but also for community members and key stakeholders.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As you've indicated, the Greater Metropolitan Cemeteries Trust has engaged quite extensively with Council in considering this planning scheme amendment, and they have highlighted that there is going to be a very extensive and long-term process of engagement, not only with Council around some of the technical elements of how the land could be developed and designed, but also, very importantly, they've focused on the need for extensive community engagement, not only with people in the local area, but also in the broader community as well, that might be able to benefit from accessing what is termed a future type of cemetery development that really is focused on open space and broad scale public access for a range of different activities. They've highlighted some recent examples they're involved in what they call term greenfield cemetery developments, similar to this site, where it's unencumbered, and they're undertaking extensive community engagement in those examples. So they're planning to build on those examples and do the same here in Donnybrook.
Thank you, Mr O'Mara. And just a second question. I note in the officer report that there's a reference to a project team representing Greater Melbourne Cemeteries Trust. I presume that comprises senior officers from GMCT, but also a multiplicity of other specialists with technical advice, whether they are planners or landscape architects and so forth.
That's correct, Chair. The GMCT have engaged a number of different specialists, and they've proposed to expand that team as they need to as the plan gets developed over the coming years. So yes, that's right. All the required specialists they have said they'll engage.
Thank you, Mr O'Mara. Are there any further questions from my colleagues? Mr Eddy?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple. Just curious, Mr. O'Mara, if the site has been reserved for cemetery for nearly 100 years, why would the planning scheme not already have allowed for this type of development to happen?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Administrator Eddie. It's a good question. And the key reason being that the owners of the land, being the various different iterations of cemetery trusts, haven't had active plans to develop the site. And therefore, there's never been an immediate need to look at rezoning for that purpose. So it's been very much a long-term proposal. It's probably one of the longest-term development proposals I've known of in the city of Whittlesea. And now's the time to decide to look at the potential development of this site in the next 10 years or so.
And I note also there's a portion of the site that is an area of Aboriginal cultural heritage sensitivity. I wonder if you could speak just briefly to what are the implications of that for what GMCT hopes to do with the site? Yeah,
thank you, Administrator Eddie, for that question. So, potential sites of Aboriginal cultural significance are managed under the required state government regulations and guidance. It's a very prescriptive approach that all proponents need to follow. And one of the expert consultants that the trust has engaged does specialise in cultural heritage, and they will need to follow all the required processes under that legislation, which is guided by Aboriginal Victoria. Ultimately, they're the decision makers. Council's obviously a stakeholder, as are local Aboriginal groups as well. But it is a very prescriptive approach they need to follow, very stringent requirements.
Good to hear. Thank you, Mr. Amar.
Any further questions? No. I'm happy to move the officer recommendation for item 6.2.2. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Eddie. Just a couple of comments, if I could, in moving this item. Firstly, as has already been indicated by council officers, this is obviously an important site that has been clearly reserved for the purposes of a local cemetery since 1931. As has been highlighted, it's in the Green Wedge, but also consistent with the Whittlesea Green Wedge Management Plan. But I think importantly, it also offers the potential for future beneficial outcomes for our residents, not just as a cemetery, but also in terms of the master planning of the site and potential environmental outcomes. And what I'm referring to are benefits that might be derived in terms of things such as weed control. There is an existing dam on the site, and there are opportunities for some sustainable water practices and improvement there, revegetation, the open space character of the site, landscaping, environmental characteristics, and so forth. So I think that there are many potential benefits into the future associated with the master planning. And I think it's really important to note that there were comments that have been provided that the Greater Melbourne Cemeteries Trust see their land assets as very significant assets for community benefit. And I think that that's a really important point to note as well. Would the seconder of the motion like to also speak to it?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may, just briefly, sitting on this panel, considering issues for growth councils, I must confess, until now, I haven't thought about one of life's great certainties. When you have a lot of people, you obviously need to deal with what happens at the other end of all of that growth. So I was really appreciative to, as my fellow administrators were, to receive a briefing from the Greater Melbourne Cemeteries Trust senior team. It's very clear a lot of thought and strategic consideration has gone into their plans, which engenders great confidence actually in the intended outcome. And we note that it is an expedited process, which I think makes sense. As we said, nearly 100 years this site has been earmarked for cemetery use. So we'll be watching this one with great interest, and certainly the community engagement, as Madam Chair has pointed out, is a very important component of this, and we stand to assist wherever possible in helping the necessary points be communicated with the community of Whittlesea. And with that, I'm happy to second, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy. Any further comments?
Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is unanimously carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Maynard. Item 6.2.3, Planning Scheme Amendment C226, Signs, Local Policy, Exhibition Outcomes and Adoption. And again, Mr. Omar, I'll hand over to yourself to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce Strategic Planner Nick Robinson, who will provide a brief overview of the report and officer recommendations. Over to you, Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I present the report for Planning Scheme Amendment C226 for a new Signs Local Policy to be included in the Whittlesea Planning Scheme. In particular, I am reporting on the outcomes of the statutory exhibition process for this amendment and put forward the officer recommendations as stated in the report to adopt Amendment C226. This amendment seeks to implement a municipality-wide local planning policy on signs, which will bring the City of Whittlesea into line with other municipalities. The policy responds to contemporary sign designs, technologies and practices to reduce clutter and ensures signs do not unreasonably impact the visual amenity of the municipality. It targets areas that consistently cause problems or delay for the processing of planning and permit applications. The policy provides transparency to businesses and the community about how council will apply its discretion under the planning scheme when considering planning applications for signs. It's important to note that the new local policy only applies to signs that require a planning permit. This amendment will not change what does or does not require a permit. Council, and now a brief overview. Council resolved on the 7th of August 2018 to seek authorisation of Amendment C216, which is now Amendment C226, to update and introduce the new signs policy. The Minister for Planning granted conditional authorisation for the amendment in March 2019. This essentially required exhibition of the amendment to be delayed until the Whittlesea Planning Scheme and the proposed new signs policy were updated to reflect the new planning policy framework, which was being introduced by the state government. The amendment was placed on exhibition between the 23rd of March and the 30th of April 2021. One submission was received, which sought specific policy changes to the exhibited amendment in relation to signs in greenfield residential estates. While significant changes were initially sought, many of these could not be accommodated. Following discussions between council officers and the submitter, agreement was reached on some minor changes to clause 15.01-1L of the exhibited local policy to resolve the submission. The changes are generally consistent with the intent of the exhibited policy. The submitter has agreed to withdraw their submission on the basis of those post-exhibition changes, which are highlighted in attachment 1 of the report, and these changes will avoid the need for a planning panel hearing. I put forward the officer recommendations as stated in the report to adopt Amendment C226, including the post-exhibition changes, and forward it to the Minister for Planning for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Administrators, do you have any questions relating to this item? Mr. Eddy.
I will, thank you, Madam Chair. I note that we were originally envisaging that some of the issues raised by the submitter might be accommodated in our new policy, but that they didn't meet the new state government requirements. I wonder if you could just speak a bit more about what are those things generally in relation to?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Eddy. Look, the submitter wanted basically a more prescriptive policy. So they were after basically the policy to be written with numerical area I suppose, sizings for, spacing and the size of the signs themselves, as well as setbacks from the boundaries in order for it to be very clearly interpreted for the end user. Unfortunately, the PPF translation makes it clear that the intent of local policy is it can only guide discretion, it cannot mandate an outcome. And with that advice and further advice from the department, we informed the submitter that that particular style of local policy was no longer possible under the new drafting regime.
So just to be clear, if I may, with a follow-up, the new PPF format from the state is less prescriptive than what we were initially looking to have in our policy, or is it the other way around?
I'm happy to answer that question, Administrator Eddie. Yes, as Nick has outlined, the PPF is a new requirement that the state government has introduced for all local council planning schemes. So all councils are required to do what's called a translation of their current planning scheme to the new PPF format. The City of Whittlesea has done that, so our current planning scheme is in line with the new PPF format. But there are other councils in growth areas that haven't gone through that process yet, and the submitter reflected upon the policies of those councils that haven't gone through the translation process, said, hey, they've done the prescriptive approach, why can't you? And that's the reason why we can't is because the new PPF requires, to Nick's point, you can't have any prescription in a policy. It's got to provide guidance, but you can't prescribe measurements, etc.
So again, if I may, so those other policies from those other councils, they will need to catch up at some stage and follow the same rules that we've had to apply to this process.
Exactly right, Administrator Eddie. So when those councils go through the translation process, it's highly likely that their signage policies will be very similar to ours, the one that's before you tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy. Just one further question, if I could, which follows on from Mr. Eddy's train of thought. I take it that the reason why the submitters has actually withdrawn their objection is because of the explanation of what has occurred in relation to the translation, and that the prescriptive nature of what the objector was looking for is not allowed in the current requirements and the policy.
That's correct, Chair, yes.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? No? So do I have a mover and seconder for the officer recommendation for item 6.2.3?
I'm happy to move that, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. And a seconder? Thank you, Mr. Eddy. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
No, I think we've covered that yourself, Chair, and Administrator Eddy sufficiently for my liking. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Duncan. Mr. Eddy, as the seconder, would you like to speak to the item?
I will just briefly. Visual clutter and signage is a bit of a go-to issue for me from my time in local government. I think it does need to be controlled. Nobody likes it to be getting out of hand. It's a slight concern to me that we can't be as prescriptive as perhaps we would like, but those are the rules that we're playing with. So I'm confident that the officers have done to apply an appropriate level of control in this new policy while meeting the state government requirements for such policies as well, and therefore I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy. I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Item 6.3.1, Business Advisory Panel Membership. And again, Mr. O'Mara, I'll ask you to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to introduce our Manager of Economic Development, Sarah Rowe, who will provide a brief overview of the report and recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Rowe.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. O'Mara. This report shares the proposed membership of the Business Advisory Panel for Council's consideration. Following the endorsement of the terms and reference at the June council meeting, an expression of interest process was opened, inviting the business community to submit an application for consideration, to which 13 submissions were received. The proposed membership represents the diversity of the local Whittlesea business community in relation to industry sector, broad coverage of additional affiliations, cultural background, and location within the municipality. They have all been engaged with council in other matters through program and/or event support, partnership opportunities, and strongly engaged relationships with council. This report seeks council to resolve to appoint the 10 local business representatives named in the council report as members of the Business Advisory Panel, appoint the position of chair to David Power, Melbourne Market Authority, notify and write to both successful and unsuccessful applicants, and publish the list of committee members on council's website, and amend the terms of reference to increase the number of local business representatives from 10 to 11 to enable a representative of the small and micro business cohort to be invited to join the panel in the future. The proposed additional member would be a representative from a Chamber of Commerce style group, to which council is proposing to establish in early 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rowe. Could I just ask a quick question in relation to the role of chair? And I note that this report is recommending the appointment of the inaugural chair, Mr. David Power from the Melbourne Market Authority. There is a comment within the report that the chair will be reviewed on an annual basis. Can you just comment about what would the process be and who would be actually undertaking that review?
Of course.
Mr. O'Mara, I'm not sure if it's yourself or Ms. Rowe.
I'm happy for Sarah to answer this question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the role will be reviewed on an annual basis. Members of the group would be invited to self-nominate themselves for the position of chair via a nomination form, with council to make the final decision and appoint. So we would do that on an annual basis and make it equitable and fair for all to be able to submit their self-nomination.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Rowe. Are there any further questions? Mr. Eddy?
Of course, Madam Chair, thank you. I note that we received 13 submissions for the 10 positions, and we've got our 10, and it looks like a terrific mix of skills and experience. I wonder if we've given some thought to how the other 3, who were very keen, obviously, to be involved, could perhaps be engaged in other ways with the work that we're trying to do in this space.
I'll happily answer that one. So one of the submissions was actually an additional business representative from the Mushroom Exchange. So we would actually ask that particular nominee to be, should Mr. Vu not be able to attend a meeting. The other 2 submitters, what we will certainly do is work closely with them and have them engaged in other council programs that would be more affiliated to the work involved. I believe that already our team have started to engage with those particular representatives and started to discuss what some of the other initiatives are that we can have them engaged in and taking part in. One in particular we would certainly see as an opportunity for them to be part of the chamber style group.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions?
No.
No? Could I then have a mover for the officer recommendation for item 6.3.1?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy, and I'm happy to second the item. And Mr. Eddy, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a very exciting development, and I look forward to being involved along with you, Madam Chair, on this Business Advisory Panel, as we've previously resolved, I believe. We were a lonely panel of 2 until tonight, and now we're a panel of 12, which is very exciting. And we've got, as I said before, skills and experience from agriculture, tourism, education, trade, resource recovery, and manufacturing, which is a great spread, I think. I think it's a good sign that we had more applications than positions, and that's why the question about how to harness that interest from those who perhaps weren't successful this time around. I note that David Power has accepted the position of chair, which is terrific, and I look forward to working with him. And note that we're hoping to establish that additional Chamber of Commerce style group that Ms Rowe mentioned for small and micro businesses, and a representative from that group. We look forward to joining the Business Advisory Panel at that appropriate time. So it's a very significant step, Madam Chair, and I'm happy to move this item.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy. And as the seconder of the motion, can I echo your comments? It is very, very exciting that we're at this point. I just wanted to note that right from the time of our commencement, we identified that there was a gap. We had a multiplicity of other advisory committees, but there certainly was a feeling that in that business and economic development area, there was a gap. So it's really wonderful to see the work that has occurred to develop the terms of reference and to get to the point of calling for expressions of interest and to have such a good response. So like you, Mr. Eddy, I'm really excited to meet the group and to have our inaugural meeting in October, because I feel really optimistic that there will be some great collaboration with the calibre of the members of the panel in terms of some of the things that are really important to council, whether it's growing key industries, whether it's supporting business innovation, and obviously facilitating employment and educational opportunities for our community. So I'm also really very excited about the establishment of this business advisory panel and look forward to being involved with them. And again, Ms. Rowe, thank you for all of your efforts in affecting this particular, the establishment of this particular group. So on that note, I'll put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is again unanimously carried. Thank you, Ms. Rowe. Item 6.4.1, joint letter Gumtree removal request, Flaxon Hills Road, Doreen. And again, if I could invite our Director of Infrastructure and Environment, Ms. Wood, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually going to pass to our Manager of Maintenance and Operations, Ms. Caroline Lintott, to talk to this item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Thank you, Madam Chair. Council received a petition containing 60 signatories requesting the removal of street trees in Flaxons Hill Road, Doreen, due to debris, leaf shedding, signs and branches falling. Significant value is placed on established street trees by Council for a number of the environmental, social and economic benefits that they bring to the local community. For these reasons, Council only removes established trees in the most extreme circumstances. As a result of the petition, an investigation was undertaken, including the engagement of an independent arborist to assess the 337 street trees in Flaxons Hill Road. Following the assessment, the independent arborist advised that the overall condition of the trees was of good form and vigour, and that most of the trees are compliant with Council's street tree management program. The arborist has recommended that a majority of the trees are retained, with the removal of one tree and routine maintenance on a further 18 trees. Since this report was undertaken, a further 2 trees have been poisoned by persons unknown, and these trees have since died. The poisoned trees will be removed as part of these works. Council officers have notified the head petitioner regarding the presentation of this report, and residents in Flaxons Hill Road and the adjoining Overland Drive will be notified following the Council resolution. The officer recommendation is that Council resolve to note the report and actions taken to resolve the written request for work on street trees located along Flaxons Hill Road, Doreen, implement the actions of the independent arborist assessment, and advise the head petitioner of the proposed works. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lintott. Administrators, do you have any questions relating to this item? No, if not, could I have a mover for the officer recommendation for item 6.4.1?
Yeah, I'm happy to move, but with a new part 2 of the recommendation, which I think will be shown on the screen. Great, thank you. So there's new part 2 will read, implement the recommendations of the independent arborist assessment, namely removal of 1 tree, routine maintenance of 18 trees, removal of 2 trees that have died, and retention of remaining trees with their assessment as part of the biannual zone maintenance program. That's all, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Duncan. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr Eddy. Would the mover of the motion like to speak to it?
No, Chair.
Would the seconder of the motion like to speak?
No, I think it speaks for itself. Happy to put it to the vote.
Could I perhaps just make a comment, and that is that it is obviously the intent of Ms Duncan's amended part 2 is simply so it is fully explicit as to what the resolution is, and that because this is really in relation to the independent arborist assessment. I think that is really the sole intent of adding in that extra commentary within part 2. I'll put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, Ms Lintott. Item 6.5.1, 17 to 19 Johnson's Road, Mernda, sale of council land. And if I could invite our Director of Corporate Services, Ms Montalti, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Administrator Wilson. As the report outlines, the property at 17 to 19 Johnson's Road, Mernda, was purchased from the state government in 2014 with the sole intent of redevelopment and resale of this property to provide a financial return to council to be reinvested in community infrastructure. This report asks council to authorise this intent to redevelop this property for resale and to commence a community engagement process. It is also proposed that 3 of the 35 lots be reserved for social affordable housing, and further it is proposed that council receive a further report on the proposed sale following the close of community consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Montalti. Administrators, do you have any questions in relation to this item? Mr Eddy?
I think it probably bears just asking and perhaps hearing a bit about the thought process behind the 3 lots for social housing, given social and affordable housing is such a critical need across the state. I wonder, Ms Montalti, if you could speak a bit about the, I guess, the proposal or the process that we've gone through to identify that amount of the site, ultimately.
The thought process that went into proposing 3, and obviously it is at council's decision whether they approve the 3 or whether they want more or less, but the intent for this property was particularly to provide that return to council to reinvest into community infrastructure. There are a number of other proposed social affordable housing developments that council will consider in the future and have considered, where a significant portion of the development will be reserved for social affordable housing. In fact, 100% of those developments. So it was felt that was a good balance between providing a return and providing some investment into the important area of social affordable housing.
Thank you.
Any further questions relating to this item?
Yes, Chair. Ms Montalti, through the Chair, can you advise what the process will be for consultation to ensure that we comply with the requirements of Section 114 of the Local Government Act 2020?
So we will have a consultation process which will be worked with our community engagement team. It will include the proposal being advertised on our website, and also letter dropping and contacting surrounding residents of this property.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? No. Do I have then a mover for the officer recommendation for item 6.5.1?
I'm happy to move this, Chair, but with a new part 2, which should be on the screen, and it is as follows. Yes, to receive a further report on the proposed sale following the close of the community engagement process in December 2021. Just adding in that December 2021.
Thank you, Ms Duncan. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you, Mr Eddy. Would the mover of the item or the seconder like to speak to the report?
No, thank you.
Mr Eddy?
No, I won't speak to this at this occasion. It will come back to us after the community engagement process. So let's see what the community has to say, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mr Eddy. In that case, I'll put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, Ms Montalti. Item 6.5.2, Administrator Action Plan 6-month update. And I would like to move this particular report and that it be noted and a copy of it be provided to the Minister for Local Government, the Honourable Sean Lyon, to LGV, Local Government Victoria, and to all local members of Parliament as a formal record of the activities of the panel of administrators over the past 6 months. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. And having moved the item, I would also like to speak to it. We've been undertaking, since we were first appointed, 6 monthly public reports in relation to good governance, our representational role, strategic priorities, and in relation to all of our activities. The municipal monitor, who had been appointed by the state government, Mr Yehudi Blaisher, had specifically recommended that the administrators prepare and publicly report on an action plan to embed good governance at the City of Whittlesea. So together with the organisation, with our CEO and the executive leadership team, we've developed a comprehensive action plan which goes far beyond a focus on just good governance. It outlines our collective priorities and actions against all of the Whittlesea 2040 priority areas, but also together with those additional elements of good governance and also high-performing organisation. And I just wanted to spend a few minutes reflecting on some of the highlights of the past 6 months, because this is actually the third of our public reports to the community and obviously to government. Firstly, as we mentioned earlier, there's the huge effort of our staff right across the organisation and obviously our community and business throughout the pandemic. And I mentioned specifically earlier on our $2 million co-designed pandemic recovery fund and the significant support that we've provided to community agencies and local businesses. We've developed our new draft 4-year community plan, and as we've previously noted, this plan integrates the municipal public health plan, the disability action plan, and the pandemic recovery plans within the overarching plan, so it's an integrated framework. We adopted our 2020-21 budget and our best practice financial hardship policy. We've really ensured responsible financial management whilst also recognising the pandemic context in terms of some of our fees and charges, and we've also previously reported on the absorption of some of the real costs of waste management that have not been passed on to our residents. We've adopted new governance rules, and a key to those new governance rules was also to enable greater community participation at council meetings and for community-based council forums and meetings throughout the year. And very regrettably, we've not been able to meet that target simply because of the COVID-19 restrictions. But we're really optimistic that we will be able to do so next year and that we will be getting out and about in the community again. We've given support for the establishment of a purpose-built Aboriginal gathering place at Quarry Hills Park. And I mentioned earlier the rollout of a new community consultation and engagement policy and the Customer First program to improve the way that we listen to and interact with our community. We've established a new Inaugural Community Awards Committee, and I'm really pleased to report that obviously Ms Duncan is represented on that particular committee, and the nominations have opened for those Inaugural Community Awards. And just this evening, we've obviously endorsed our Inaugural Business Advisory Panel, which is another really important element for us. In terms of in-person and online citizenship ceremonies, we now have some 450 new citizens, and that is a really great honour for us to officiate at those citizenship ceremonies, whether they are in person or online. And then, of course, we've adopted a number of major strategic plans, including the Whittlesea Township Strategy, the Road Management Plan, the Investment Attraction Plan, the Greening Whittlesea Strategy, the Draft Domestic Animal Management Plan, and our Rethinking Waste Plan. So really a lot of focus on strategic planning. And we've undertaken very significant community engagement activities, and we've actually itemised in detail all of those activities that we've been involved with for public purposes in the report as attachment 2. And I've already talked earlier about the completion of some major infrastructure projects, and they are well noted within this report. So in summary, it's yet again been another very, very busy and productive 6 months. We will continue to publicly report against our action plan on a 6-monthly basis. And as I noted before, our vision for the future is that we will be getting out and about, continuing what we started by way of site visits. Yes, I can see Mr. Eddie having his fingers crossed. Resuming our meetings with community organisations and with our residents, having a much greater public profile rather than just online, and being as accessible as we can into the future. So I'm very proud to speak on our 6-month action plan and report. And could I ask whether the seconder would like to speak to this item? Oh, sorry. Before I ask the seconder, I actually haven't got a seconder for this item. My apologies about that, colleagues. Do I have a seconder?
I will second it for you, Chair.
My apologies. So should I start all over again with my commentary? Apologies.
Yes.
Apologies. Would the seconder like to speak to this item?
I think you've summed it up perfectly, Chair, just to show exactly transparently what we have been doing across many areas of council in terms of governance and community advocacy and those types of things. I just think we're all hoping that as soon as we can get back to visiting community and being out and about. But I also would like to acknowledge that, Chair, through your leadership and through Mr. Lloyd, the CEO's leadership, we've been quite agile in having to redo the way we work and things like that, which everybody, of course, is doing in lockdown. But particularly to our frontline teams as well at council, they've been very, very good at just sort of pivoting straight away when they need to keep the community services up and about. And obviously we've had to attend some community events online, which you've talked about, and we've just adapted to that. And then as soon as we can, we'll adapt back to being in person. So hopefully that's not too far away.
Thank you, Ms. Duncan. And it must be late in the evening because I actually did get a second earlier on, and very respectfully, I note that Mr. Lloyd and Mr. Joyce did not correct me, but my apologies for that. Mr. Eddy, would you also like to speak to the item?
I would, thank you, Chair. I do note it's only 5 to 8. I'm not sure what you called it late.
Long day, Mr. Eddy. It's a long day.
Thank you for your comprehensive summary. Believe it or not, there's a lot more in this report than Administrator Wilson and Administrator Duncan were able to mention. I'm glad Administrator Duncan mentioned the CEO and his team. A power of work has been carried out, but it can't be done by 3 of us. It relies on the CEO and the executive team and all of their support staff to be able to deliver everything you see in this report and what's to come. And we're very grateful to you, Mr. Lloyd, and your team. If you could pass that on, please. The community plan, the financial plan, still to come, not far away. I think they'll also reflect the extraordinary amount of work that is being done behind the scenes on behalf of the community of Whittlesea. I'd love to see what the Monitor thinks if to read this report and see how far Whittlesea's come in the time that the administrators have been here. And I note that this is going to the Minister, and if you'll allow me, Madam Chair, to welcome the Minister back after a period of medical leave. He was back on deck last week, and I did have the opportunity to see him late in the week. Terrific to have such a passionate and dedicated supporter of local government back in that role. So I'm sure he'll find this report interesting reading as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy. Thank you both to Ms. Duncan and Mr. Eddy for all of their comments, and obviously for all the support that they've provided. And I think it is important, Mr. Eddy, that you highlighted that this is about a partnership, not just between the 3 administrators, but between the administrators, the CEO and the executive leadership team. And we are forever grateful for the wonderful support and strategic insights of the executive leadership team. So on that note, I'll put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 6.5.3, Audit and Risk Committee matters. And if I could ask our Executive Manager, Governance and Strategy, Mr. Frank Joyce, to introduce this item. And I think he's actually going to introduce Ms. Boyle again to present this item.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And as you'd be aware, as yourself and Administrator Eddy are members of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting, it's all very relevant, and you'd probably be aware of some of this that's been undertaken, especially in relation to the recruitment for the new independent members. But I will pass over to Ms. Boyle to give an overview of the report.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Boyle.
Through you, Chair. I present the report on a number of Audit and Risk Committee matters, as Mr. Joyce mentioned, some of which you were a part of. In August, our longest serving Audit Committee member, Mr. Michael Olbrich, completed his term, and a comprehensive recruitment process was undertaken with yourself, Chair, and Mr. Eddy, I believe. And also our CEO and the chair of our Audit and Risk Committee. Through that process, 2 preferred candidates were selected from an application process of 26 applications. This report recommends the appointment of Miss Jen Johansson and Mr. Bruce Potgater as independent members of the Audit Risk Committee for a 3-year term. In addition, we have recently conducted a review of the Audit and Risk Committee Charter to align with better practice and good governance. As part of this review, a number of recommendations are outlined in the report. These include the requirement for an additional independent member. In addition to the Charter review, Council performed a review of the remuneration paid to independent members. A benchmarking exercise of the remuneration fees paid to independent members was undertaken with 14 other councils. The results of this review indicated that City of Whittlesea's members' fees are below the average paid by the other 14 councils reviewed. Therefore, the Officer recommendation is for Council to set the fees as $10,000 per annum for the Audit and Risk Committee Chair and $8,000 per annum for independent Audit and Risk Committee members. I put forward the Officer recommendations as stated in the report.
Thank you, Ms Boyle. Administrators, any questions of Mr Joyce or Ms Boyle? No? So do I have a mover for the Officer recommendation for item 6.5.3?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr Eddy, and I'm very happy to second this item. And Mr Eddy, would you like to speak to it as the mover?
I will just briefly thank you, Madam Chair. The Audit and Risk Committee is a very important committee of the Council. It provides assurance that the appropriate risk mitigation controls and planning is in place, and it's really important to have that independent perspective that comes from having an Audit and Risk Committee. I note that in passing this that we're updating the Charter to include an additional independent member. The calibre of the applications, 26 I think Ms Boyle said, was extraordinary. Lots of people with terrific experience around the sector and beyond, and I'm very confident that, and I wasn't personally involved in the selection process, but I'm very confident that we've ended up with two very high calibre independent members joining the team. I note and am pleased that we've done some benchmarking to ensure that we're remunerating the individual members of the committee appropriately, and I note that the two new members will start a 3-year term effectively from about 5 minutes from now when we pass this motion. So happy to move and support this, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr Eddy. And I would like to make a few comments as well. I fully support all of the amendments proposed in this report, and a number of them are just reflective of best practice, and like Mr Eddy, to really acknowledge the benchmarking work that has been undertaken by council officers. I support the increase in the number of independent members, the number of meetings annually because of our huge agendas and the really comprehensive work of the Audit and Risk Committee. The formal review process for the performance of independent members, limiting the potential term of independent members to a maximum of 6 years, so that's actually reducing the potential term, and also importantly inviting the chair to attend council meetings to present their biannual report. I think they're all really fantastic elements. I was involved, together with Mr Lloyd and the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee, in the interviews of the Audit Committee members, the new Audit Committee members, and Mr Eddy is quite correct in that the calibre of the applications that we had were quite exceptional, and the two people that are being appointed or recommended for appointment tonight are two really exceptional candidates who bring with them complementary skills and will certainly continue to add real value to the Audit and Risk Committee. So again, thank you, all of the comprehensive changes to the terms of reference, and I'd now like to put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, Ms Boyle. Item 6.5.4, 2021-22 Growing Suburbs Fund project applications. And if I could ask Ms Montalti, Director Corporate Services, to introduce this report.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. This report asks Council to approve the submission of the 7 infrastructure projects which are listed in priority order to the 2021/22 round of the Growing Suburbs Fund. It's a requirement of the Growing Suburbs Fund guidelines that a council resolution be provided in support of the submission. The nominated projects total $7.5 million, which is the maximum approved allocation amount for the City of Whittlesea. It's important to note that all the projects that are currently listed, all the projects are currently listed in our future 4-year capital works program, but any funding received will offset Council's future infrastructure spend, which will allow proposed infrastructure to be brought forward. Council's been extremely successful in past rounds of the Growing Suburbs Fund, and we hope this success continues with this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Montalti. Administrators, do you have any questions in relation to this item? Mr Eddy.
Yes, Chair. I just want to get some clarity on that last point. So if we're unsuccessful, Ms Montalti, for any of these projects to get funding, they're still going to happen, but they won't happen as quickly. Am I understanding that correctly?
No, they will still happen in the same time frame, Administrator Eddy, but it will be Council's funding that will fully fund those projects.
Oh, okay. So I've obviously misunderstood. So I thought you mentioned something would be brought forward.
What I was referring to, Administrator Eddy, was that if Council were successful in this funding, it would allow $7.5 million of Council dollars to potentially bring forward future infrastructure.
Ah, yes, because we'd have that $7.5 million
Correct.
to spend on other projects. Yes, I'm
Correct.
with you. Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? I'm happy to move the officer recommendation for item 6.5.4. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Chair, happy to second.
Thank you, Ms Duncan. Just a couple of very brief questions. I really strongly support all of the 7 submissions that have been outlined, and Ms Montalti, I'm particularly pleased that we're really seeking the maximum allowable $7.5 million. I think these are really critical projects for the municipality. They're already within our capital expenditure program, and clearly they meet the guidelines, so they've got to be ready for commencement within 18 months of the funding announcement. So we've obviously done a lot of the required preparatory work. And again, I just want to thank all of our council officers, the cross-organisational working group, which I think has been really important in the selection of the projects that are going forward. And I note in the report the active liaison with the Department of Jobs, Precincts and Regions, which is clearly really important to understand the guidelines and to give ourselves a maximum likelihood of success. So thank you again. And would the seconder like to speak to this item? No? Mr Eddy? No. I'll then put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 6.5.5, Contract 2019-71, Extension Temporary Agency Staff Management, and again invite Ms Montalti to speak to this item.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. This report asks Council to approve a variation and a 1-year extension to Contract 2019-71 for Temporary Agency Staff Management. This contract was a collaborative contract with the Northern Region Councils and was awarded to Commensura, and the contract has been performed satisfactorily, and extension options are available to the 31st of October 2023. It's important to note that an increase in the final year of this contract was impacted by Council utilising contract staff for vacancies while reviewing its permanent resourcing requirements. This variation is fully offset by salary savings, and it's expected that utilisation of contract staff will be reduced in the new year, and this has been factored into the future cost estimates of this contract.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Montalti. Any questions of Ms Montalti? Mr Eddy?
Yes, Chair. In regard to, I note the comments that the variation is offset by savings elsewhere. In regard to point 3, which is envisaging a further extension of the contract from 2022 into 2023, I wonder if you could speak to the likelihood that that would be required and the potential size of any variation, or is that crystal ball gazing?
I would probably say it is, Administrator Eddy. However, I would expect, with the performance currently by that contractor, that we would expect that we would extend that contract to the end of the term, which was that further 1-year extension. However, I would say with regard to spend, it does fluctuate with agency staff, depending on whether we receive funding. So a number of roles we have on contract staff are funded by external grants and such. So if that grant funding continues, then the contract staff continue. However, we're unsure of any of that into the future, I suppose. But what I can say is we do expect the cost to come down based on what it was in this last year of the contract. We don't expect that to continue into the new year.
Madam Chair, given there is, thank you, Ms Montalti, given there is some uncertainty there and we're currently extending the contract by 1 further year, I just wonder whether we should be looking to have this come back to the council at that point of time with a review before exercising any further extension.
Thank you, Mr Eddy. Are you proposing an amended recommendation?
Yes, I believe I am.
All I was going to say is before you do, I might just check in whether there's any further questions in relation to this report.
No, thank you, Chair.
No. Mr Eddy, I presume then you're moving the officer recommendation for item 6.5.5, but with amendment.
Yes, I am. I'm happy to move, but in relation to part 3, I'd like to propose a different part 3, and that is that any further extension of the contract 2019-71 management beyond the 31st of October 2022 be subject of a further review and report to council, and I so move.
Thank you, Mr Eddy. I'm happy to second it and fully support the intent behind that. Mr Eddy, would you like to speak to this item?
Madam Chair, I think I'll just be repeating the points that I've just made, so happy to leave it at that and see if it has support.
Thank you, Mr Eddy. Point well made. And I'll put the item in favour. The amended motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms Montalti. I note that there are no notices of motion. And there are no questions to council officers.
No, Chair.
Administrators, are there any items of urgent business?
No, Chair.
No, Chair.
Could I then invite Administrator Duncan to provide an update to the council and members of the public in relation to any of the activities she's been undertaking over the past month? Thank you, Ms Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, attended with yourself, Chair, and Administrator Eddy, many citizenship ceremonies held online. So again, congratulations to all of those people. It was fantastic to be able to hold those ceremonies online with everyone, and otherwise they'd be waiting for quite some time, I think, to do it in person. So I hope they enjoyed their time. I had the Whittlesea Reconciliation Group meeting as well, which was very good, and we're progressing well with moving one of their major festivals to be an online festival this year, later in the year, just because of the restrictions with crowd numbers and the pandemic at the moment, and no certainty as to where that will land. I also attended a Vax chat and Q&A session that was held by one of the senior doctors at Northern Health. And it was a great opportunity for the community to be online, to actually hear from this vaccine specialist about the myth busting, I think, and it broke a few myths for myself, but also for the community to actually be able to ask whatever questions that they had. And there were some excellent questions that were answered. So hopefully that's helped allay any fears in anybody in the community about vaccination. And then I've just done a Plenty Valley FM radio interview probably 2 weeks ago, just promoting some of the activities we had on for the kids during school holidays and other matters. That's it from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Duncan. Are there any questions of Ms Duncan? No? So if not, I will now invite Administrator Eddie to provide an update to both the Council and members of the public.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very briefly, obviously the entire period since the last meeting, we've all been under some form of lockdown restrictions, but the business of Council has gone on in a virtual environment. So we've had multiple briefings on issues that are very important, including today having received the Greater Metropolitan Cemeteries Trust senior team, which was very enlightening. On your behalf, Madam Chair, it was my pleasure to step in as the presiding officer for 5 citizenship ceremonies last week and welcome 121, formally welcome 121 new citizens to the city of Whittlesea. They are such joyous, happy occasions. I wish every community meeting could be as happy and joyous as they are. And look, we're making the best of less than ideal circumstances by having those in an online environment. Other than that, I think there was I think it was since the last meeting an online session with a number of very interested community members in relation to the community plan and the new financial plan, very ably led by the CEO, fielding many questions on a broad range of topics that evening. That was very well done, if I may say, Mr. CEO. So there's been a bit happening, despite the fact that I haven't moved very far from the chair I'm sitting on in my study.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy. Any questions of Mr. Eddy? No. Thank you for that. So if I could just also make a few brief comments. With my colleagues, obviously was a session that's already been discussed on the proposed community plan and the long-term financial plan, and Mr. Eddy has already reflected on the many comments and questions that had come in. And then alongside Ms Duncan, the online session, which was a Vax chat with the Q&A, which was, I had actually reflected on the night that I thought I was really quite well informed, but it went to show in a way how much more learning I got from that session. I attended the annual general meeting of the Layla Living and Learning Centre last week. I had a full day of audit committee interviews, and we've already talked about the appointment of our new independent members on the audit committee. I had a meeting with the executive director of local government Victoria, Julie Reid, 2 weeks ago. And then importantly, alongside Mr. Lloyd, we've had a whole series of individual quarterly meetings with local members of parliament, and that included Mr. Rob Mitchell, Miss Bronwyn Halfpenny, Mr. Andrew Giles, Mr. Colin Brooks, Mr. Craig Ondarchi, Ms. Samantha Ratnam, and importantly, Minister Lily D'Ambrosio, which is really important in relation to local issues and also the pandemic as well. And I'm happy to respond to any questions that there might be. And I don't see any. So on that note, I will ask our Chief Executive Officer to also provide an update to both the Council and members of the public.
Thank you, Chair, and I beg your indulgence. I've got a slightly longer than normal report tonight. The past few months has seen us dealing with a new COVID outbreak, which has had significant impact on our local community, including a number of local community members sadly dying from the effects of the virus. Since early September, the COVID situation in the north has continued to increase to a critical point where we've been seeing up to half of all Victoria's cases in the city of Whittlesea and Hume council areas. The Hume outbreak is shifting across into Whittlesea, city of Whittlesea, and we're now seeing over 100 COVID positive cases a day. In response to the increasing number of local community cases and the modelling predictions of what is to come for our community, Council has formally activated our emergency management team. I've also joined a high-level daily COVID working group with the North Eastern Public Health Unit and the Department of Health to ensure a consistent flow of information and data and to advocate for the City of Whittlesea and our community's needs during the pandemic. We've also continued to work closely with our colleagues in other councils. Particular note is Hume, Darebin and Moreland councils. Our advocacy has directly led to a number of additional vaccine pop-up sites being established, and I'll speak a bit about that in a moment. Our emergency management team is coordinating our COVID response, including providing material support to those that are isolating. During September, Council received referrals from 136 households. We've also been supporting other community agencies, including the Whittlesea Community Connections, who are providing support to families who are struggling with hardship due to the current COVID situation, or who are COVID positive and need material aid. While vaccination numbers started slowly, they have grown significantly in the past few weeks, with significant growth in first doses in particular. I was informed today that we've reached, as of yesterday, 78.4% first dose, 16 and over, and that's a 6.7% increase in the past week, which is fantastic. And 42.3% of our residents have received a second dose, and that's a 4.4% increase in the past week. While these increases are encouraging, the numbers are still lagging behind the Victorian averages, and the state first dose number of 82.3% has been achieved as of yesterday. We have, however, pleasingly moved from having the 5th lowest vaccination rate to the 9th lowest in the course of the past week, which is fantastic progress, and I'd like to thank everyone that's been vaccinated and added to that number over the past few weeks. Council has been working with the Victorian Government and other providers to ensure enough vaccine supply and opportunities to access the vaccines are provided in our local community. We've been able to secure 2 Victorian Government school pop-ups, one at Hazel Glen College during September and another one at the Epping Secondary College just this past weekend, where some 300 to 400 people a day received their first dose vaccine. This coming weekend, there'll be an additional pop-up vaccine clinic at our French Street Hall in Laylaw from Thursday the 7th of October to Sunday the 10th of October, 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. each day. And we hope to see more of our Laylaw community turning out for vaccination. Laylaw, Epping, Wollert and Thomastown have lower vaccination rates compared to the rest of the municipality and some of the lowest rates in the state, whilst at the same time having a real significant number of active cases. Of the 1,224 active cases in our municipality, 56% of those are just in those 4 suburbs. The Plenty Ranges Arts and Convention Centre continues to operate as a successful vaccine hub run by our partners at Northern Health, with some 1,500 doses being delivered every day. And more stock of Moderna, Pfizer and AstraZeneca are being diverted into pharmacies, to GPs and the state hubs in our municipality to meet the demand. As a council, we've been working to prioritise the sharing of COVID and vaccine information, but more importantly, a drive towards vaccination, which we know is the way forward in this pandemic, and that will see our community and our businesses reopen. In September, we hosted an online vaccination information session, which has been mentioned already, with Northern Health's Dr. Bolton, Head of Infectious Disease. That was very well attended, had a broad range of questions, and that session has had close to 500 views on YouTube subsequently. We're also working with our multicultural community to provide information sessions in languages other than English, and there's an Arabic session planned online for later this week. A business information session has also been organised for the 7th of October, and that's to help connect local businesses with the support that's available to them, as well as address any questions about their COVID-safe obligations. We're continuing to work on various projects to support vaccination, including creating mobile booking booths, which will be located at various shopping strips and key locations to assist our community to book their first and second vaccinations. These are due to swing into action this week, and with the support of Whittlesea Community Connections, we'll have bicultural health navigators supporting the community in their own languages as required. Council will continue to prioritise vaccination opportunities and amplify the state government messaging around the importance of double dose vaccination as we move forward in the roadmap to reopening. And it is quite clear at the moment that we are seeing a bit of a lag in the second dose take up in our municipality. We'll continue to use our resourcing to support our community and local businesses with material support, advice and information as required as we look forward to reopening, hopefully in the next few months. Please, if you've not received a vaccine and you're able to do so, please book in as soon as possible and play your part in keeping yourself, your family and your community safe. Finally, I'd just like to put a big shout out to all of our staff that have been working so hard for the community, whether that's working from home or whether that's on our front line. Thank you to each and every one of you for everything you're doing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Administrators, do you have any questions of Mr. Lloyd?
No, thank you, Chair.
Could I just make a summing up, a couple of comments? And Mr. Lloyd, you acknowledged the enormous contribution of all of our frontline staff and all of the emergency management team, and we echo those comments. But I would also like to particularly acknowledge the exhaustive efforts that you have put in. You've been at the forefront of leadership on behalf of the City of Whittlesea, on behalf of our community and also businesses within the city and more broadly. And I know that the success that we've had in relation to increasing the number of pop-up sites and really increasing the vaccination rates has also been through your endeavours in conjunction with all of the health authorities. So we thank you enormously, as I indicated, for your exhaustive efforts as well.
Thank you.
I note that all of the verbal reports will be documented in the minutes, so thank you all for those. Administrators, I now require a motion to close the meeting to the public under section 66(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020 for consideration of confidential items. Item number 11.2.1, compulsory land acquisition. Do I have a mover to close the meeting for consideration of confidential items?
Certainly, Chair. Happy to move that.
Thank you, Ms Duncan. And Mr Eddy, thank you for seconding. And I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. And that then brings us to the end of the open meeting, and therefore I declare the open meeting closed. Thank you.